Welcome to the eCommerce Growth Show, brought to you by Segmentify, the fast, lean learning machine, the fastest learning, most revenue-generating personalization platform for e-commerce.
Hello and welcome to this, the first episode of a brand new podcast. Kudos to you for getting in early ahead of your competition. So this is the eCommerce Growth Show, a podcast formed of regular series, each of which is going to focus on a different important topic in the world of e-commerce. For this, our first series, so many firsts, we're focusing in on what you, as a retailer, need to know about to take your sales growth to the next level in 2020. We've got 6 episodes coming up in this series, each focusing in a different area that's essential for e-commerce growth. Our guests come from some of the leading technology providers in the e-commerce space. So if you want to know exactly what the tech stack opportunities are in 2020, you are listening to the right show. In this episode, we're looking at websites. Next time, it's going to be on-site personalization. And then we're going to look at getting traffic to your site, payments, reviews, and the post-purchase experience. Make sure you subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on your podcast app of choice so you don't miss a single episode. I'm Chloe Thomas. I'm host of the eCommerce Masterplan podcast and best-selling author of multiple books on e-commerce and co-host of this show too. And I'm joined on every episode of this series by Phill K of Segmentify. Hello, Phill.
Hi, Chloe. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I'm interested to hear what we're going to find out from Mark in this episode, but why did you want to include BigCommerce and Mark in this series?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've been in the sector for quite a while now, and I've known BigCommerce for a number of years. And I've always been very keen to understand really about why they're so successful in the market. What are they doing that's important for merchants to understand, particularly if they are looking to migrate from an existing platform, or at least understand what is going on in the marketplace within the e-commerce world for their businesses. And so, knowing that kind of BigCommerce is a kind of this headless technology, which I'm not actually fully understanding myself, obviously we'll learn more from Mark. But the idea of this kind of importance of performance and scalability in a simple way to both the merchant, and then obviously that then knocking on to the customers, is clearly something that's very, very important. And I know that BigCommerce are a big player in that space of trying to do that for their merchants. So on that basis, I thought it'd be very interesting to hear from a senior guy who basically built up the team in EMEA for that.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure we're going to learn lots about that from Mark in a moment or two. So should we get him on?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
It's time to welcome our guest. Mark Adams is Head of Europe at BigCommerce, a platform that deals with security and scalability to enable enterprise brands to fast-track their growth and build differentiated commerce experiences across multiple channels. With over $17 billion worth of merchant sales having gone through the platform in over 135 countries, it's fair to say that BigCommerce know what they're doing. Mark's been in the e-commerce world for almost 20 years, advising market-leading brands and retailers and focusing on the technology stack side of things. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Chloe. How are you doing?
Great to have you here, and I'm excited to talk tech. Aren't you, Phill?
Absolutely. So, Mark, thank you so much for coming today. Why don't you give us a little bit about yourself in terms of anything memorable that might have happened to you since you've been working at BigCommerce?
Wow, lots of memorable things. We've obviously, I was the first employee on the ground in EMEA in Europe, and built the team. So that's been pretty interesting journey over the last 18, 19 months. The thing I think that sticks out for me actually was my interview process. So I got introduced to BigCommerce via an acquaintance that was the CEO of one of BigCommerce's key partners. And when I started interviewing for the role, I went out to Austin. I think I had about 14 interviews over 2 days, all in all, with various execs. And the one that stood out was a CFO. So, and it was the one I was most worried about because my background was been in e-commerce on the professional services side of things, implementing and supporting customers with implementing e-commerce solutions. I'd not worked at a SaaS technology vendor before, and SaaS businesses have some quite unique things about them in terms of how they scale, how they grow, the KPIs that are measured that are important to SaaS businesses, such as lifetime customer value, cost of acquisition, annual recurring revenues, growth rates, all of these things I had to swat up on for this CFO interview with a guy called Robert Alvarez. And he kicked off the interview. We started talking about my background, and then he just said, right, tell me about yourself. Tell me about what is important in a leader. How do you build a team? It was all the soft stuff that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to be, QA'd on financials, SaaS metrics, and all these things. And it was just really all about people. And it transpires that Robert's actually the culture champion in the company. He's the CFO, has been there, one of the longest serving individuals in the company. And he's just totally interested in how people feel, how people learn, how people grow, and the impact that, as technology leaders we can have on people's careers and their lives. And it was an amazing meeting. And I now spend once a month talking to him about that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what, for me, set the scene for what life was going to be like at BigCommerce.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. That cultural side is so important, isn't it?
And who would expect a CFO to be the culture lead? Sorry to all CFOs listening, but
totally bizarre. I've never come across that before.
Yeah, amazing. I suppose it's amazing you've had the opportunity to actually build the culture from the ground up in EMEA as well. It's been such a great thing to do.
It is. It's something we focus on a lot. So the first year in market was 2019. We were kind of ramping the team. And so, achieving some targets, onboarding customers, building out the core team was really important. And actually, our objectives for 2020, yes, is to continue to grow pretty fast. We've got some aggressive targets, but I'm less worried about that because I'm fairly sure that's going to happen because of the success that our merchants are having and we're having in the market. But I'm more interested really in building a foundation within our team here in London that it becomes the team that will go and launch us across EMEA over the next 2 or 3 years. So building the capabilities in individuals, the management structures, the organizational structure that will support that growth.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, we're talking about, in many ways, the sort of disruption that's going on in the market is clearly partially at least to do with the culture of the companies and the technology they have. I mean, what's your thoughts on the current market in terms of, so much going on in the e-commerce world in general at the moment?
I think you're right. So if you look really at where the disruption is coming from, and let's just pick e-commerce, it's not just happening from an e-commerce platform perspective. It's happening across the stack in CRM, in customer management, personalization technologies, presentation layer technologies, PWAs, headless. There's a whole bunch of technologies coming to market that are changing the game for merchants, allowing them to be more agile, allowing them to run technology much more simply, to get live quicker, to change and make changes quicker to the e-commerce experience, and that's all helping customers grow. I don't think, certainly in the last 15, 20 years that I've been in e-com, almost since really it started, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, has there been the rate of disruption from technology vendors that there is today, kind of at any point?
I have to say, I completely agree with you, Mark. It is, in my career, to see how the process of picking and choosing and working with a website provider has changed in just the last couple of years is crazy. And I think there's a lot of retailers struggling to catch up with how the game has changed. I often come across retailers who are really struggling to just do something basic like create a Google shopping feed or integrate a new payment provider because they're still in the old world, if that makes sense. And I think it's a lot for the individual e-commerce business to manage to catch up with on how they can now embrace this new world. Are there any key things from their perspective you think are brilliant about what's happening?
Yeah, so when you think about that old world, Chloe, I think what it is where you kind of procured an e-commerce platform, but then you have to bolt everything together yourself, or you get an agency to do it. You have to bolt in the payment gateway. You have to bolt in some of the solutions. You have to configure, integrate, customize that front end, whatever it might be. And that would take an awful lot of time to do and money. And actually, those technologies over the last 10 years have evolved, become even more complex. And now many of them have been acquired by big technology vendors like Adobe acquiring Magento, like SAP acquiring Hybris and Salesforce acquiring, Demandware. And what happened is that just complexity has exploded. And so merchants are struggling with this complexity, struggling with the costs of running their e-commerce technology stack. Whilst at the low end of the market, what's been happening is relatively new to market players such as BigCommerce have come in, provided a really simple, easy to use, integrated out properly out of the box, where literally the merchant is pointing and clicking to deploy payment gateway solutions, tax and shipping solutions, personalization technologies, whatever it might be, literally point and clicking on those. So they're up and running a fraction of the time with less complexity, less customization, and they're trading. And these disruptive technologies, and it's happening across the piece in ERP, in content management, in e-commerce platform, for example, have evolved out of the low end of the market, right? Because in the low end of the market, you had to solve that complexity problem because the merchants couldn't afford, didn't have the time or the skills to actually go and plug everything together. And so over the last few years in particular, these SMB-based technologies have evolved to support fast-growing, large, more complex merchants. And that's the journey that BigCommerce has been on. And what we do then really is make things a whole lot easier, much lower cost, and much quicker to implement and make change, and react to market environments with building out new functionality very, very quickly and at a fraction of the cost that they were able to do that previously. And that provides them with a competitive advantage now. And this is what when I talk about disruption, I think this is what's happening. And it's great for the merchant and it's great for the consumer, because now the consumer gets a more responsive experience that's tailored to them, and it's constantly changing and evolving.
It's almost like, from my perspective, and I'm nowhere near as deep in the tech side of things as you are, Mark, so do correct me if I've got this wrong, but from my perspective, it feels like last year in 2019, we reached the point where it wasn't just the new fast, brand new small businesses that had suddenly gone fast who we were hearing about on these new platforms. It was actually existing big businesses going, kind of almost peering over the hedge and going, gosh, life looks really easy over there. Maybe it's time for me to go to one of these new players in the market. And across multiple platform types, we seem to be seeing that. And what that seems to now be creating is that the disruption that's happened in the tech sector has now shifted to disruption in the commerce sector. And I think the businesses that we see succeed over the next 5-10 years, actually, no, let's grab that next 3-5 years, because who knows where we're going to be in 10 years' time. But they're going to be the businesses, the retailers who have made that shift from old school tech onto new school tech, because the speed of implementation, the speed of implementing strategies and improving results is just so much easier.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And this has been driven by the consumer, right? So the consumer's expectations around the experience they receive when they walk into a store, whether shopping online or on a mobile device or however, is that it's Amazon-like. And we all know how much Amazon spends on their technology platform, how often it changes, how quickly it changes. And that's the level of expectation that retailers in this country have to keep pace with. But they don't have the resources that Amazon has. They don't have the budgets that Amazon has. So they need to achieve the same thing with similar types of budgets that they've had previously, but they need to do more. They need to do it faster. They need to get the experience integrated so that the consumer, wherever they come in, via social, purchasing through social channels, purchasing in a kiosk, in a store, on a mobile device, that experience is seamless, and that the customer gets what they want, how they want it, when they want it. And technology is the enabler to solve that for sure. And I think that's what we're seeing from a disruption perspective. But you've also got to look at what the challenges are in retail today. You've got competitive forces, you've got increased costs, whether that might be in the labour market, business rates, their technology stacks, for example. They need to do more with less. And I think there's a recognition that to stay competitive, that you've got to meet that challenge. And I think, whether it's your technology strategy or, how you run your team, and what that team focuses on, my argument would be to retailers, why are you focusing a large part of your, e-commerce budget on keeping the servers up, on trying to upgrade the technology and patch a security issue, when actually you should be focused on trying to grow the business, growing top line revenue, improving conversion rates, providing experiences across different channels. That's where the focus should be. And I think too much of it is spent on kind of the plumbing and keeping the lights on. And that's just a complete waste of money. And it's this mindset change that I think is happening as well in the market, with businesses both large and small, that they need partners that will help them meet that challenge.
Yeah, I think there is that. When you move from old school to new school tech, you do get that ability to start spending time on the stuff that matters, rather than, as you say, maintaining the plumbing, which in our lives we all gave up on maintaining the plumbing a long time ago to focus on far more interesting things, because that's kind of that dealt with for us. And I think that's one of the benefits that often gets overlooked by retailers when they're making those purchasing decisions. I guess if someone who's listening, and I'm sure many of them do, to this podcast, has the whole I need to find a new website platform on their to-do list for 2020, what are the key things they should be considering when making that decision? Because, in the old days, it was the retailer was left to try and work out if the platform would work. But we've got a long way past that now. So what should be on their decision-making list?
I think top of mind should be the cost of ownership for the technology decisions that you're making. And I don't think often this is entirely understood or documented or worked out. So cost of ownership isn't just around what the technology will cost to procure. It's what it's going to cost to implement. It's the level of resources that it's going to chew up in your organization to get live. And that kind of talks to the complexity story. The more complex something is, the more people and processes and guidance you need, right? But then you've got to run the whole thing. Then you've got to integrate it, and the costs of that ongoing maintenance, management, trading need to be factored in. So that's the thing that I would very much, kind of be telling retailers they need to look at. I think then they need to think really, really heavily about how integrated into the wider technology ecosystem their vendor is. And so if you're having to pay and spend time on all of those additional integrations every single time, then you end up trying to integrate this new personalization engine or rating and reviews engine or the new payment gateway or your ERP, warehouse management tool, or whatever it might be. And it stops you, if you're having to forget about the cost for 1 minute, it's of course costly to do that, but it's also the time it takes. And if it's taking up time, that means you're focusing on, again, a technology process of integration. It's chewing up resources. You're not focused, the team, on the things that you need to be focused on, which is investing for growth and investing in the kind of things that are going to help you grow.
And if that integration takes 6 weeks to build, whereas if you're on another platform, it takes 30 seconds to click and plug and connect, then presumably you were moving to that technology for a really good reason. So you've lost 6 weeks of optimization, you've lost 6 weeks of performance, because it's that bit more difficult.
Yeah. This is the mindset change that I think needs to happen. And this is why at BigCommerce we're very focused on trying to own those integrations more closely. So making it literally, there's no technical intervention for deploying those third parties. And a lot of vendors in lots of different technology disciplines are moving in this way, particularly the SaaS vendors. And it's all about simplicity, making it easier for the merchant, allowing them to plug these things in and not focus too much resource and time on that. You think as well, the reason you want to, one of the ways in which you can grow, is that you continually innovate the experience. So that takes development effort. If all of your developers are tied up doing those integrations and other tasks like testing and these things, then again, it's stopping them focus on developing cool stuff that's going to aid with a better customer experience. And that's where I think there needs to be a shift of resource to technology tasks, mundane technology tasks, through to stuff that's actually interesting for the person working on it, but it's also going to be a driver of growth for the business.
So does this now mean that the choice of agency to build your website and the choice of tech are kind of inseparably linked in your decision-making process? They go hand in hand. It's not about, I found a great agency, we'll build with whatever they want to build with. It's not about, I found a great piece of tech, let's try and find an agency that can do it. It's kind of the two together. Are they equally important?
Well, I come from that world, that agency world, actually. That was my background before joining BC. So I would definitely say yes to that. And I would have said yes then. Procuring the technology is often one of the easier things to do. Implementing it, getting it live, much harder. Now, certainly BigCommerce helps solve that problem through lower complexity, quicker time to market. But what it means is that you might be asking now your agency to do slightly different things. So if we're focused on trying to grow revenue conversion in different channels, actually we need agencies that have the skill set to do that, not just a development agency anymore. And I think this is the other thing I'm seeing in the market, and certainly when I look at our partner community, we really look for agencies that have a cross-functional skill set. Yes, they can do development on BigCommerce, great. They've got that, but can they advise the customer on how to grow their business, on where they should be focusing their marketing budget and investments, and on experience and these types of things? And those types of agencies are a much better fit for that, because that's what we want to be doing for the customer. And so you begin to see the profile now, I think, of a lot of agencies beginning to change, where they're less development resource intensive and they're more consulting focused and advisory and growth minded.
Yeah, certainly I echo that. I'm seeing those who've made the shift from old world to new world tech, finding that all those time benefits we've talked about your team not having to do this, that and the other, your agency isn't having to deal with the plumbing either. So they're able to help you take things to the next level rather than just keep things ticking over at ground level, as it were.
They're adding more value to that relationship, and therefore they're treated more as a partner than just a resource for development.
Mark, we've spoken quite a bit about BigCommerce, who are obviously one of those leading the charge of this move from old world to new world. Do you want to tell us a bit about BigCommerce specifically, and how the listeners can get in touch with you and the BigCommerce team if they're interested in finding out more?
Indeed. Well, the simplest thing to do would be go to our website, www.bigcommerce.com or .co.uk, and get a feeling for the kind of merchants we support. Have a look at some of those case studies and the brands that are using us, and the platform features and functions, and our partner network and ecosystem. If you would like to talk to us directly, a couple of ways to do that. Reach out to me If you would like to, mark.adams@bigcommerce.co.uk or bigcommerce.com. And actually, we're at IRX in Birmingham, the RX event in Birmingham on April 1st and 2nd at booth number 59. So we welcome people to come down and have a chat to us and our partners over those 2 days.
Excellent. I'll see you there too. Such a good event, IRX. Anyone who's listening, thoroughly recommend you go along and attend. And if you get to go and chat to the BigCommerce team, so much the better. So I think Phil wanted to press you a little bit more on the ins and outs of BigCommerce at this point.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot, actually. Thanks so much, Mark. It's been really, really interesting for me, coming from the technology space that kind of support platforms like yourselves. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that the reason why you guys are doing so well and disrupting that market is, as you say, the responsiveness of the platform to change as that journey of that brand is evolving for their customers, and taking away that pain so that they can focus on what they really need to do, which is drive that customer lifetime value in driving, the conversion and all the other things that they're trying to do for their customers and give them the best experience. So I've learned a lot, just why it's such an important disruption that's going on. I mean, all I would just ask you really is an opportunity for you. I mean, there's a number of platforms out there in the space at the moment, clearly, that a brand might explore when looking for this right sort of disruptive technology to achieve those goals you've been talking about, less plumbing and more focus on customer experience. What would you say, if you were to boil it down, would be the defining factor or two as to why it's very important for our listeners and merchants in general to engage with BigCommerce?
So I'm going to come back and talk about what's going on in the market again with technologies, e-commerce technologies. If you look at the last 10 years, all of the leading e-commerce technology platforms have been acquired by large global technology companies. And those e-commerce technologies have become applications in a wider technology stack, right? And those vendors are focused on trying to integrate everything and say, well, we've got a vision to support you with absolutely every technology that you need, and this is our vision. The problem with that vision is, unless you are one of the retailers with the deepest pockets, you simply can't afford that. Unless you have a significant amount of internal capability, technology capability, delivery capability, skill sets, project program management, business analysis, all of those things that it really requires to get a project off the ground with some of those technologies. I don't think they're a good fit. I also think that the disruption from technologies like BigCommerce coming to market is happening at a far faster pace than any of those big tech firms can keep up with, or indeed acquire, as they realize they don't actually solve that problem. And I think the merchants themselves are going, well, I don't think, whether it's big player A, big player B, are going to provide me with the best tool for the job that I need to do at the right price point in the right time frame. And I think fundamentally that's what's happening, and that's how we're disrupting the market. And players like us, it's not just BigCommerce in e-commerce, but it's you guys in the personalization space. It's partners like Bright Pearl that we have in the ERP space, and so on and so forth. I could go on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. It's been great getting you on the podcast today, and it's been thoroughly interesting talking about such a fascinating area, something which fascinates me, and I'm sure many of the pieces of advice you've given will help the listeners on their tech journey this year. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Great. Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Phil.
Take care.
So, Phil, as someone who also works for a disruptive, new world, non-worrying about the plumbing technology business, what did you take from our chat with Mark there?
Sure. I mean, I think I kind of mentioned it to Mark at the end with my sort of, my last question, but I certainly learnt about how important it is getting my head into the merchants world and thinking, hold on a minute, what are they trying to do? They're trying to focus on giving each and every customer and visitor to their website, the best experience possible, the most opportunity to become loyal to their brand, and increase that such critically important customer lifetime value. And just realizing that if you are mucking about in patching this and updating that and trying to plug in that, and then talking to so many, I don't know, different vendors or whatever it might be, to try and understand which parts of the ecosystem to plug into your platform, I mean, it's such a massive waste of the time that you should be putting into actually growing your business. And I think that what I picked up from the chat with Mark is that the reason why they're successful in disrupting that is because they're taking all that off the table with a platform that is, best of breed in terms of already providing that plug and play ecosystem and platform that then allows them to do that. So that's really helpful for me to understand the positioning, if you like, as to why BigCommerce is successfully disrupting the kind of market in the UK. At the end of the day, I learned about the cost of ownership side of things as well, linked to that.
Oh yeah, I thought that was such a good point for Mark to make, because it's so easy just to look at the build cost of the actual website and forget about everything else.
Yeah, and if those changes are happening on an ongoing basis, which they clearly are going to be, which I've never really thought about before, you don't just set up a website, plug a few bits and pieces in, and then you're done forever. It's an ongoing journey. I've just realized that. And so if that journey is really difficult and takes a lot of time, you're only a small team, or even if you're a big team, you've got a lot of other stuff to do. So you can't invest in that growth activity, because that downtime is basically an opportunity cost for that.
Yeah, there's that's something which it's obviously quite hard to calculate, but it has to be a factor in deciding what platform you're moving to next, because making the wrong choice is just so costly.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope all of you got some great takeaways from this episode too, especially that if your tech stack is holding you back, then change it. If that is you, then the good news is that over the next 5 episodes, we're going to be diving further into the world of the tech stack and how it can enable you to speed up your e-commerce sales growth. You can get the full transcript of this episode, that's everything we've said, at segmentify.com/podcast. There you'll also find details of the whole series, as well as links to get a free demo of Segmentify. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be hearing from Segmentify's very own Murat Soysal. We'll be learning about the ins and outs and the practical applications of on-site personalization software. This is an area I thought I already knew a lot about, but it turns out that all the disruption we've been chatting to Mark about is having an impact on the on-site personalization world too. So I've had some catching up to do. If you want to stay up, make sure you too tune in to our next episode.
Put us to the test and let us prove we can drive more revenue for you. Sign up for a completely free proof of concept or split test against your current provider, set up and optimized by our team within a few days at segmentify.com/demo.